Hi guys, I'm Joe Klimzeski, founder of the Diet Doc and co-founder of the National Academy of Metabolic Science, here with Dr. Kori Probst, our health psychologist and wellness director. And I got a wellnessy topic for us today, Kori.
Okay.
Somebody this week asked about fasting, and I do get this question quite a bit. And typically, I think in today's culture, it's been absorbed as part of the time-restricted eating and intermittent fasting. But this specific question was about the type of what I would call medical fasting, or at least longer term fasting. And I know before the show started, you said you don't really have that much experience. Is that correct? You've never tried anything like that?
I have never personally done a fast. No. And yes, you're correct. I don't have many clients who have asked me very many questions about fasting, especially from that perspective, medical fasting. And so I'm super interested and also very curious about how it can enhance health and what the effects are. So,
and I think those are the typical interest points. A lot of people have heard about it. A lot of it does come in from more the holistic alternative health crowd, and there are some bizarre claims, but there are also some real benefits to different forms of fasting. But I will bet you get questions about cleansing or cleanses at times.
I have not so much anymore, though. It's almost like the tables turned, and people understand that what's being promoted out there as a cleanse is really pretty bogus.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of that is rooted in some good intentions. A lot of people think because of what they read that there is some value there, but it also becomes a place to just hawk supplements and fiber powders and that kind of thing. But what I want to do is first define this, because I think we'll probably roll this into a couple episodes. So we'll do a little mini series. I remember a couple years ago writing a pretty lengthy article about the phases of fasting, which really is kind of a pseudonym for starvation, whether it's in a micro level time frame or not. But you are inducing starvation in your body, and you're forcing your body to use internal energy stores at a massive rate, because fasting, first of all, as a definition, is fasting, no energy whatsoever. So different from juice fasting, different from cleanses and all that. I want to address that and kind of scale through those differences. But a lot of people are interested, because I do think they just hear about this on the internet, about even a one-day fast or maybe repetitive fasting. And there's literature on even alternate day fasting, which is almost a macro level of intermittent fasting. So here we go. You ready to discuss this?
Let's dive in for sure.
All right. So first, let me go to the easy things. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating. And I will start by saying, even that, though I have created, some content myself about some of the benefits of those principles, even that is not always necessary. If somebody thinks that going for an entire 16 hours without eating is some kind of a fantastic panacea of potential progress that they've never received before, think about using that exact same calorie content, and instead of smashing it into an 8-hour window, what if you did eat in a more normal meal pattern, but you simply had more time between the rest of the meals? Because I had a conversation with a client just this week, and he said, anytime I've actually tried that, it doesn't seem to work. Not only am I really, really hungry for those next meals, but I feel like even if I keep my calories the same, I actually feel like my energy is down. I feel like I'm expending less energy, and I just can't lose weight that way.
Okay, so that was my question, is work how? What's the purpose of it? So this particular person, his goal is fat loss.
Right.
Okay.
And yeah, he's looking at intermittent fasting, the time restricted 18 or 8 and 16-hour window. And my point to that is, as the first step of fasting, because we're not even into a full day yet, we're just into this,
longer spans between meals.
Right.
Okay.
So in between meals, this is a cornerstone of why people are interested in fasting. But interestingly, they never go far enough. They think, okay, if I fast even 1 day a week, then my body just gets rid of all of this crap. So we've
literally, that's what a lot of people have been told.
Well,
remove all the sludge from your colon by fasting.
There are some catchphrases. That's kind of the cleansing thing, but there are some catchphrases in the alternative health crowd that insinuate that as soon as you fast, all of the cells in your body just start purging toxins, and all of a sudden you're healthier and you feel better. And I mean, you may feel a little better because you missed a meal or you fasted for a day just because you're a little bit lighter. But from a cellular level, there's not a lot happening in 1 day of fasting.
Okay, so that's an entire 24 hours of not consuming any calories.
Right.
All right.
So I am going to save some of the down and deep biochemistry for our next episode, because I really do want to show, the average human being can live about 100 days without food. And after about a week, your body goes into this shutdown mode of you're just conserving everything, because you go through all of those internal substrates. So we know how much glycogen we have in our liver and muscle tissue. We know that we have subcutaneous body fat, or I should even say more intrathecal body fat that is just easier to access. And then it takes 4 or 5 days for your body to settle into almost pure body fat usage. That's when you really accelerate some of those things that the naturopathic crowd would contend happens. But there are some benefits. I'm going to keep cycling back and forth between somebody who just wants to fast for a day or so, or do something in a cyclical fashion for part of their health. There are benefits to that, but what they think they're getting on this extreme end is definitely not happening.
So before you jump into that, Joe, can we just list what the reasons might be people would choose to fast for a day or longer might be?
I do think, and this is one of the questions that came up from a viewer, I think people really do believe that there's some massive health value. If you're going to do something repetitively like that, like if you fasted 24 hours 1 day a week, again, you're never working through all of the glycogen, all of the things. You're not even getting to the point where your liver is completely switching over from glycolysis or glycogen use and all that stuff. You're just not. But it gets you further down the track. It's like doing the first lap of a mile, and that's kind of motivating, right? If I can do 1 lap, maybe I can do 2. Maybe I can do this every week. And if I can miss an entire day of eating, maybe I can say no to those potato chips tomorrow night after work. So there is a point of people just realizing they don't have to remain addicted to food. And so that's one of the primary benefits of exerting that much control over your nutrition, where you would fast for an entire day. It comes down to just pure discipline and realizing that you can do that.
Yeah, there definitely is a huge psychological component. Something personally, just having competed and dieted incredibly stringently, I've said, I'm hungry when I'm not dieting. I'm hungry when I'm dieting, and I'm hungry when I'm not dieting. So why do I have to look at it any different? When I'm not dieting and I'm hungry, and I think a lot of people feel this way too, then I should just eat, right? Well, why? Hunger is normal. And so if we can just view it the same way, I've done it before, I can do it again, to your point. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's and there are some things where I just got off the phone with a client, and this is a great guy, brand new to our company and my work, and he plays in a band. And so he does his 9 to 5, and then on the weekends, he's up till 3 a.m. playing gigs and all that. And so we're almost like shift work. We're having to talk about how do you take this much food and then take it into this 24-hour day. And so we're talking about energy systems and how you might need another meal there. And I'm not going to get into all that detail. But one of the things he said he's already noticed that there is time when, he gets that first hunger pang and he can ignore it, drink some water, and he's not hungry again for a couple hours. But he said contextually, if I've just trained recently, then I did a meal, there is a point an hour or two later where I'm ravenous. Like I feel blood sugar dropping. That's a massive change. So that's an important distinction in fasting. You can't plan a 24-hour fast or even a 3-day fast or a week-long fast and then say, oh, by the way, I'm going to go run a marathon or I'm going to train my hardest.
You have to consider the context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are these transitions. And so I do want to give this nuance.
Okay.
Just like you have heard people who like ketogenic dieting as a lifestyle, maybe Dr. D'Agostoni, who he trains without carbs and he can go all day, sometimes eating just one meal and train just fine. When I did a 5-day pure water fast, it was when I was doing my first master's degree and I was also training for a bodybuilding competition. I absolutely trained every day, fasted. Yeah. And the first couple days sucked bad because my energy substrates were definitely not stabilized toward pure ketosis.
Right.
But then I was like, I'm not as energetic. I'm not quite as strong, but I felt fine. I got through it. And when you get beyond having glycogen stores available, like we know right now at rest, our body uses about 60% of our energy from fat. But when you have no carbs left in your body, no glycogen, that goes up to 85+%. And so you are more efficient. You are truly getting keto adapted. But here's what's interesting about fasting. Ketogenic adaptation is the fact that you're going to get there and you're going to stay there. Yeah. If you're fasting for one day, you never get there. Right. If you're fasting for 3 or 4 or 5 days, you get there, but then you eat and come right out of it. So that's what I mean by exactly to your question, what benefits are there? Why would people want to do this? It is not for those long-term medical fasting needs. If somebody had stage 4 cancer or they have this dire surgery coming up in a month and their doctor wants them to lose as much weight as possible just to make it through the anesthesia and organ stress and all that, absolutely fast away. Yeah. That's when your life depends on it. But somebody who just wants to employ these principles as part of their day or part of their week, part of their normal health system, you do have to ask that question. So I want to answer it as an example very honestly and say, well, what if somebody just likes that discipline? We've historically as a species tied fasting to a spiritual discipline, and having fasted for 24 hours at a time and even a week at a time, I will say that even though I'm not going to say that it's a religious experience, it is definitely a very Zen-like change in your life. When you get to that second or third day without food, and maybe for some people doing just one day, maybe that second or third missed meal, and you realize I'm not a slave to food. My body has these urges, these impulses, and I can say no. I'm telling you, man, that is empowering. And like you just said a few minutes ago, if somebody learns that they can control that and say no, that is just a massive surge of dopamine to me, just instantly, that I'm being rewarded with this massive, almost superhuman control over these urges I've never been able to control. Yeah. It's making me think about my meditation practice, because I think that a lot of people would benefit from going into a fasting experience just as a practice and not. It's funny because I was just discussing discipline and meditation with someone yesterday, actually. And in the Buddhist tradition, like
discipline doesn't mean what it does like in the Western culture currently, which is like very staunch, rigid, like just get it done. It actually means joy. Discipline means joy. And I wonder how it would be for people if they approached a day of fasting or even 2 days from that space. Like not, oh, sort of joy, but just this space of equanimity, peace, ease. Like I'm just going to do this because I want to have the experience, whatever that experience is going to be, because just like in meditation, it's not always freaking fun. It's really never easy. I don't sit every day and feel like, oh, this is awesome. I have a bunch of thoughts that are flying at me, and the practice is just come back to the breath. Let it go, come back to the breath. Let it go, come back to the breath. So as you're describing, like, you're going to have urges and you're going to have impulses and you're going to think about food or whatever it is. Okay, so come back to the discipline. What are you practicing? You're practicing just being. So, yeah, I really like that.
I think that is an incredible place to stop for a second, because it is so important. If somebody goes into a fast like they would their normal diet with just pure drudgery, this is going to be tough, I'm going to hate this, I'm going to be starving. I had a conversation with another client through email this week, and it was kind of a negative thing, and this is never going to happen, and I keep screwing up, and blah, 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 and here's what I want to do. And, I felt like reaching through the computer and strangling this person, saying, and I probably kind of did verbally, but I said, you get to make these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, half of the world today is going to go to bed hungry, and you get to, I didn't use the word joy, but you should look at this as a positive change. You're about ready to engage on this because you are volitionally making that decision. Not everybody gets to make that decision. And this should not be something you look at with massive trepidation, but I'll use your word joy, that I get to improve my life. I have these tools and these resources and the intellect to be able to do this.
And there is plenty of evidence out there that shows us the manner in which we think about a situation changes our perceived level of effort. If your client is going to go into this fast being like, oh, I have to, I'm going to be miserable, this would be terrible and awful, like, why am I even doing it? She's going to make it harder on herself. It is actually going to be terrible and miserable and awful, and she's going to want to stop at every moment where an urge pops up.
I'll even go deeper epigenetically. I just did this course in evolutionary psychology, in the amount of neurotransmitters and gene promoters and other things that happen biochemically when you have those negative thoughts. Every time you trigger that response again, it becomes a physiological response. You, as you just said, you will not perform as well. You're stacking the deck against yourself. And so that's why I said I wanted to stop on your point of, maybe making this some kind of a meditative or at least intellectual approach where you're thinking through these things. Why am I doing this? That was the whole title of this for me, was first of all just explaining and answering the question of why you would want to fast.
Yeah. No, I love it, because when I sit down to do my meditation practice, I'm not going into it to attain anything. I'm not going into it to achieve anything. I'm going into it to be genuine, to just have whatever the experience be authentic and be what it is. So then there's no judgment. There isn't any self-talk. It's just a practice. Urge comes up, come back. Urge comes up, come back to that one single point of focus. I do think it could be completely meditative and in a practice in mindfulness. Yeah.
So let me frame it back into the fact that you can go through any steps toward fasting, and I want to outline those as we close today, all the way to real fasting. And I'm talking about whether you want to do it for 5 days or a week or a month. I mean, you could lose 50 pounds in a month if you went on a pure water fast. Would not recommend that without medical supervision, but I'm just saying that's the difference between missing a meal or two and actual fasting.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the why. So I just want more discipline. I don't want to be a slave to food. I think there are some health benefits. So what are some steps I can take toward fasting? I think missing one meal and doing intermittent fasting is kind of a fool's errand, in that you're still eating the same amount of calories. You're just crunching them together. I don't think there's any physiological benefit there. I can assure you it will be proven otherwise if enough research is done. But if it's just a matter of like the old school dieting, well, just don't eat anything after dinner. Well,
Right.
now that was the old intermittent fasting without the title. You just missed that meal instead of breakfast. That's fine. But you can also still spread out your food, get enough protein in to promote anabolism and metabolism and all that. So missing one meal doesn't flip the needle for me in terms of even calling it fasting.
And maybe from a physiological perspective, from a psychological perspective, it might have some benefit for someone. I'm going to do this just so I know that it's possible. Like, I'm so used to and in a habit of eating at this time every single day, and it's become a very rigid part of my routine. And maybe I've seen it get in the way of me being able to do other things. I am choosing to discipline myself to not do that today.
I would agree if you could make that a habit. If you can say for the next 7 days or 21 days, I'm just not going to eat after dinner, or
Right.
I'm only going to eat protein alone as my last snack. And that's a new thing. That's, again, I'm not going to call that fasting, but that's a step toward a structure.
Structure change.
Could be in that vein. But I would say that a massive calorie reduction, as people would call a cleanse, could be a step in that direction, because maybe for 3 to 5 days, you're just going to have 2 of these shake potion things that are full of vitamins and fiber.
Potion.
And then you're not eating any other food. Like that's real fasting to me, not water fasting, pure fasting, but it is going without your normal food. And I do think, contrary to what people might think I might say, that there is some value to that. Not, again, that you are truly cleansing your body. Matter of fact, somebody in my family just brought this up. You talked about like the colon thing, and like we've got 75,000 years of toxins and shit packed into our colon walls. Like do a colonoscopy. Like they stick the camera up there. All you see is tissue. They don't run into big turds or anything in there because they've been there for 16 years.
Doesn't make any sense.
So that's not what a cleanse is for, but for the inductive properties. A lot of people say, well, I just want to do this cleanse to start my diet, or I want to do that maybe 1 day a week, like a fasting principle. I just 1 day a week, I'm going to do this. I think that does have value because you're at least getting some nutrition. It's going to fill you up a little bit, but you're certainly reducing your calories probably by 75%. And I think if that's done well, you could say that that's part of a type of fasting. It goes back into it being just a discipline. If once a week I'm going to do that, I mean, more power to you. I think that helps just by reducing those calories and increasing your level of intentional discipline.
I think personally, it and research has shown this too, that if you're going to do something, you want to do it with bright boundaries. So doing nothing at all in terms of ingesting calories might be easier for a lot of people than doing like 2 juices throughout the day. I think it would be that for me. I think if I had a juice, I'd probably, the urge to consume more would be greater, and I would feel that fluctuation in blood sugar, and that would not help me. So I think that I would fare much better with that just staunch, I'm not having anything today. Water.
I would say that if your definition of a juice fast was just picking up a glass of apple juice, I would agree. Most people, from a social psych perspective, would, as you just said, because of boundaries, would say, okay, I have this product. I'm supposed to take a scoop of this in the morning and a scoop of this at night. I just mix it together, and that's my food for the day. Now they have a plan or a system. It's not just up to them.
Right.
If somebody just said, well, have this many calories or whatever, go out there and do it on your own, that would be more difficult.
I agree. Yeah.
But to your point, there are definitely going to be changes in blood sugar levels and how your body's accessing glycogen and that kind of thing. So you got to be ready for some hunger. But again, that's where you get to start feeling the difference between appetite and hunger, between just your stomach being empty and blood sugar being low. So those are the things to watch.
And see, that's what I love this part of the discussion, because it's, can we be with the experience without labeling it in some way, like, oh, you know, what, there doesn't need to be a valence to the sensation that's occurring in my stomach or that I feel in my head as a result of, you know, blood sugar dropping or whatever. Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. So for this first episode of a little mini series on fasting, and we're gonna throw this in the science or fiction category. I am definitely putting my stamp of approval, as there is scientific evidence that fasting is good for some things, probably not in most of the things you think, until you get on the backside of a very keto adapted, not because you're eating keto, because you're starving yourself. I'm talking about a true medical fast. We're going to talk about that next time, because I really want to go through. I think it will help if people see the stages that your body goes through to get to that point. So you can achieve the same thing with just dieting. If somebody, Kori, loses 20 pounds over months, they've done everything in the world you would ever accomplish with fasting, but in a slower, safer, more sustained way. So you don't have to do a 7-day water fast and lose 15 pounds. You don't have to necessarily do a 1-day fast and think that you're accomplishing something amazing. Benefits for sure, but not the kind of stuff that you read about. And that's what we're going to cover next.
Awesome. Yeah, I am. I'm really interested in what actually happens in the body as a result of fasting. And then maybe too, we can talk about how hypocaloric diets too have been shown to increase longevity. And I don't know if that's part of what you want to go into in terms of fasting and what that might look like. But
yeah, it's really amazing when you look at starvation, just the way that genetically your body can protect itself. Like in that point of time where your body's literally starving to death, you still don't digest skeletal contractile protein. Again, just a survival mechanism. So your heart can survive. So you still have ambulatory power and all that. So yeah, it's interesting to see biochemically, because I guarantee you, not a lot of people talk about this in normal diet and nutrition, but really going to help open your eyes to what happens even in the diet process, just at a slower pace.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, guys, for the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast. We will see you again soon. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Kori.